All right, everybody. Welcome to our partner showcase. We're going to be talking about Poly today, and the title of our presentation is Learning Braille Has Never Been More Fun. We have people that are coming in and joining us today. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to launch our first poll question. It is a question that many of you guys are familiar with one add-on in there. So we want to know where you're from, of course. We want to know how you heard about this webinar, and we want to know what your job title is. But what we'd also like to know is prior to this webinar, whoops, hold on one second. Prior to this webinar, which of the following statements applies to you? So you should be able to check all of these. So I've read about Poly. I've heard about Poly in some detail from a coworker or a peer or someone else. I've used Poly, excuse me, this says none of these statements apply to me, so it appears as though I didn't edit this. We also want to know if you have talked with people at a conference from APH or from Tinkerbell about Poly. So I apologize there. I thought that I had edited the slide, but I had not. All right. So as you guys are taking a look at those questions, I'll advance. We'll talk a little bit about the ground rules today. While this is being brought to you through the Access Academy at APH, this presentation, this webinar is not going to be for ACVREP credit today. We do want you to put your questions into the chat, and I should have turned that on for everybody. And closed captioning is available. And as I move along here and as we begin to look at the responses to the poll question here momentarily, I do want to reiterate that today's webinar is not for ACVREP credit. We're going to be talking to you and telling you a little bit about Poly. We're going to be showing it to you, but we have not formalized any learning objectives for this. So it gives us a little bit of flexibility in how we go about presenting this information. The downside of it is the next hour that you'll be spending with us will not be for ACVREP. All right.
But it is going to be a lot of fun. So it's totally going to be worth it.
It's definitely going to be a lot of fun. There's no doubt about that. All right. Again, please continue to respond to our poll questions. And I do want to bring up that the educational outreach team and our online learning team will be bringing you another webinar a little bit later on this summer. It is Power Up Braille Literacy with Poly. That's going to be on September the 7th. It will come from a teacher perspective, and they'll go into details about setup, creating a teacher portal, and creating a student portal. And it will, again, be available for educational credits. So we'll touch on some of these things today. We will not go into them as in depth as they will a little bit later on this summer. All right. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you and then just summarize a little bit as well. So when we look at where everybody is at today, it looks like it's an even horse race with folks from the Northeast, the Southeast, the Southwest, and the Midwest, all coming in at roughly between 13 and 23% of our population. I don't know, William, is that statistically insignificant, those differences? I don't think it quite gets into that.
No, it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's close. Okay, how did you hear about the webinar? 22% of you heard about it from the website. So that's a little bit of a change. 70% of you heard about it through email. So it tells us that you guys are getting out to our website to hear about what it is that we're up to. So that is great. And then as far as job titles go, the majority of you are teachers of visually impaired. We've got a few O&M instructors. We've got some Braille transcribers, some AT specialists, as well as some rehabilitation professionals out there. And then 24% of our audience is other. And then last but not least, when we look at how you have heard about or what your exposure has been to Poly, 38% of you have read about Poly. 14% of you have heard about Poly in some detail from a coworker or peer. 12% of you have encountered us at a conference, that is APH or Tinkerbell. And then 13% of you have used Poly. And there are 38% of you where this statement doesn't apply to you. So I'm going to stop sharing the results. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to hand this over to members of our educational product development team to take it from here. So William, I believe you are up.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sully. So yeah, this is Poly. Learning Braille has never been more fun. If you want to go to the next slide, please, Sarah.
So hello, I'm Sarah Welch. I'm going to be co-presenting today. I'm a product specialist on the Braille technology team, and I'm just excited to be here.
What did you do before you were a product specialist?
I am a former TVI.
All right. And I'm William Freeman. I'm the Tactile Technology Product Manager at APH. And I started at APH as a Braille transcriber, and then I did accessibility testing. And now I work with our Braille displays, our embossers, and with the Poly.
And I might add that these guys are all from the great state of Kentucky.
Yes, the great state of Kentucky. We're known for Braille literacy, tobacco, and horse racing. Isn't that? Well, that's the right order, isn't it?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I heard that Louisville is also going to be known for making batteries for things like cars and whatnot.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll add that to the list. So our agenda, what is Poly? Which is, I think, good that we're going over that, because it looked like almost half of you haven't really had any exposure to Poly. So thank you so much for being here. We'll kind of go over the basics, and then Sarah's going to take over, and she's going to go over the layout of the device and describe what it looks like and what everything does. And then we'll get into how you learn on the Poly. And then it'll be all about Helios for a bit. Helios is the learning management system that goes with Poly, and that is included with Poly. And so there's a lot to learn there, and I think folks are going to enjoy that. And then at the very end, I'll come back with a demonstration of the Poly. So depending on how much time we have left, we'll get into some games and check out some lessons, and you'll get to see and hear the Poly in action. It'll be a fun juggling game. It's always fun to present when the thing you're presenting can talk. But I think we'll be able to make it work. And we will be monitoring the chat throughout. So if you've got any questions at all, please throw them in the chat, and we'll either answer them in the chat, or I'll be the one monitoring it. Or I'll throw it to Sarah, and when she comes to a stopping point, and we can address it in the webinar. But with that said, let's get going. All right, so what is Poly? Poly is a multimodal interactive electronic device to learn the basics of Braille. So you've got multiple ways of interacting with the device. I'm trying not to step too much on the description part, but I mean, you've got the big Braille cells, and we'll check out how you can interact with those and what their purpose is. You've got the regular sized electronic Braille cells. You've got the Braille keyboard, and then you've got the electronic slate that will work with any stylus. And so combining all that with audio, with games, that's how you're able to interact with this device. And it's great for young learners who are starting to learn Braille. And you can incorporate it with your favorite system for learning Braille. So you could incorporate Poly with building on patterns, for example. So you can go through building on patterns, and as you introduce things from building on patterns, you can do the associated lessons in Poly. And we may touch on that a little bit later. But that's just kind of a real basic overview of Poly. And then in a bit, Sarah will go into a lot more detail. So the big news really is it is currently on back order. It has been very, very popular. And our initial shipment sold out very quickly. It was really actually amazing how fast it sold out. And we're getting another shipment very soon. And the bad news is that shipment has already sold out. So the orders that are coming in soon are already called. They've already been claimed. I see Kim's already got one. I'm glad you were able to get one. And then shortly after that next shipment, we have another shipment coming. And so that other shipment that's coming should be coming in September. And then that one will be the one that we're able to hopefully keep around longer and folks are able to get a chance to order it. So we will be coming off back order in September, but it has been a very, very popular product and we're really excited about how much folks like it. So the price is $999 and it is available via quota funds. So you can use quota or non-quota funds to purchase Poly. And it comes with the Helios subscription when you buy it through APH. So normally Helios would cost an annual fee, but when you order the Poly through APH, it just comes with Helios and you don't have to worry about that because we know that administration systems don't necessarily like having to deal with subscriptions. All right.
And just to chime in on the end of that, so not only is Helios free, but it's continuously free. So
Right.
It's not like a limited number of years that you have it. So as long as you have Poly, you have Helios.
Exactly. Thank you. All right.
So let's move into device layout, because for those of you who are not as familiar with Poly, that gets back to the what is Poly. So if we look at the front of Poly, there's an image of it on the screen currently, which I will also be describing. So Poly is an electronic device. It does have to be plugged in to use. There is no internal battery. Currently, the image on the screen is if you were looking at the device top down when it's laying on a table. So when it's on a table, the part that's facing the ceiling is what we're calling the top or the front. So with this, there's no rounded corner. There's rounded corners. There's no sharp edges. And if we look at the device starting closest to the learner, we have 3 navigational keys. So we have a left arrow key, a space bar, and a right arrow key. Right above that is our digital Braille slate. So like Will was saying, you can use any type of stylus with this. When this is used, what is written will pop up on the standard Braille cells on the top of the device. So next above that, we have a standard 6-key entry keyboard. Above that, which is the top of the device, we have a built-in speaker, which does actually get pretty loud. To the left of the built-in speaker, we have the twin large Braille cells. These are actually interactive. So some of the games and activities will require that the learner press down dots on it in order to create certain letters or to identify which dot that they're requested to identify. On the right side of the device of the speakers is a 6 standard Braille cell display. And like Will was saying earlier, please feel free to ask questions at any time. We're here to get you the information that you want within reason. Obviously, we can't go into all the details in 1 hour. There's just too much. So if we keep looking at, so take a quick break there. If we have our first poll question, true or false? To function, Poly must be plugged into an electrical outlet.
All right, we have our results coming in. And I believe that, William, you were asked a question about Helios accessibility. You responded to that as our audience is responding to this, that yes, accessibility with Helios, which is web-based, is a top priority and something that the APH team and the Tinkerbell team has worked on. And then, does it have a headphone plugin? The answer to the question is yes, it does. And then to enter the slate, do you do it backwards? And I think the answer to that question is, well, of course. Correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
Just like your paper slate that you're used to, functions the exact same way, except this one is digital.
Right.
And one thing cool too about that headphone jack, I've got it's the headphone jack. So the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack to another 3.5 headphone jack. So one's plugged into the Poly, the other is plugged into my computer. And so later you'll be hearing the Poly through my computer when I share my sound, which could be a useful way to use the device with a student that is remote. You could have the student plug the Poly right into their computer. You don't have to rely on a microphone or anything like that. You can literally hear the device from a remote location and be able to follow along with the student.
All right, so we have had 79% of you participate in this question. I've got goosebumps because everybody's following along, Sarah and William. 69% of you said that statement is true. To function, Poly must be plugged into an electrical outlet. 31% of you said that's false. Sarah, what's the correct answer to the question?
Well, the correct answer is true. Poly must be plugged into an electrical outlet to function. It does not have a built-in battery.
So the negative on that is that you could look at it as has to be plugged in. The positive of that is that you're not going to have to worry about batteries on it eventually going south on you and having to replace them. So glass house.
It also helps keep the cost down.
Yeah,
definitely. So
right.
We'll move on. If we look at the left side of Poly, so here we will find that when we're starting closest to the learner, as if it's standing on a table, you'll find 2 USB ports. And that is actually something exciting that we've added to Poly, or in the process of adding, I should say. It's not pushed live to UI yet, but we will be having a USB upgrades enabled. So to get that, you would get it on Helios. We'll have more details when that's fully released, but exciting times. Right above that, we have an Ethernet port. Poly can be plugged in directly to an Ethernet or be connected via Wi-Fi. Continuing on the device, we have a repeat button. So what's cool about this, if you just lightly press it once, Poly will vibrate to let you know that she's on. And if you press and hold the button, she will repeat audibly the last thing that she said. So if you're in a lesson and your mind starts to wander and you can't hear something, she'll repeat it for you. Right above that, we have the on-off switch. And then the last thing we have is our power in, where you would plug in the power cable for Poly. And it does have an LED indicator light for those that can access that to say if it's on or off. But remember, you can use the repeat button and she'll vibrate to let you know she's on. If we look at the right side of Poly, this is where the audio jack that Will was talking about. We also have a scroll wheel that controls the volume of Poly. So what does learning on Poly really look like? We've talked about the physical aspects. Let's talk about the lessons that are on Poly. So all the lessons on Poly are in UEB, or Unified English Braille. She does have uncontracted and contracted Braille currently, and these are over 1,000 lessons. So that is split between writing and typing. So it'd be approximately 500 for writing, 500 for typing. And each lesson is available either in the writing or typing. So for instance, when you're learning lesson A, you could have your learner do it to where it's writing. So they'd be answering and interacting with the digital Braille slate. Or you can have them do typing, which is where they use the 6-key entry, which is like the traditional Perkins style keyboard. So a typical lesson, and this would be in uncontracted Braille. So it's broken down into different sections. So the first section is an introduction to dot combination. After each section, there is an ability to get out of that lesson and then come back to it, because basically it's like a save point. So if you have to pause in the middle, that's perfectly okay. You can come right back to where you left off to one of the sections. So introduction to dot combination, what is that? So in this lesson, it is how to pronounce, and then it shows an example on the Braille displays. So it'd be example on the large Braille display as well as the small, or the standard size, I should say. And the learner is instructed to press down dots on the large Braille cell to make the letter. So going back to letter A, on the first Braille cell on the large Braille cell, all the dots will be raised, and the learner would have to press down all the dots except for dot 1 to show that that's how you make the letter A. The next thing you'll find is our reading game, Find the Odd One Out. So this is on the standard Braille display, and all the cells will be filled with the letter. So like, for instance, if we're talking about letter A again, all the cells would be the letter A except for 1. And the learner has to read, find which cell is not the letter, and then press the key that is not the letter. So for instance, if cell 5 is not the letter, they would press key 5. For contractions, they can do this as well, that take more than one cell. They'd be pressing the 2 keys for the 2 cells that are not a part of that contraction. There are 5 rounds for this game. The next game you'll find is a reading game, Find the Letter. It's kind of similar, but the opposite. So for this one, on the standard Braille display, all the cells would be filled, and you have to find where the letter or contraction is that you're looking for. And same thing as before, for contractions that take more than one cell, you would press down the 2 keys that correspond to that. So if the contraction is in cell 1 and cell 2, you'd press down keys 1 and key 2. There's also 5 rounds of this game. You'll find that's a common theme. So next we would have a letter typing or writing lesson. And that would just depend if you're in the typing section or the writing section. So the learner will find that there's examples on the large and standard Braille cells of the letter or contraction. The learner will type the letter if they're in the typing, or writing if they're in the writing. And there's an example on the screen for that. So after that is successfully completed, the examples go away and the learner is asked to recreate it. So if it was A, they'll do the key for A, which is key 1. So I know that there's probably some questions from that. Did we have any questions come up in the chat about any of that?
One question we might want to address, I've addressed this in the chat, but does it teach Nemeth was the question.
So currently, no, it does not. It actually does not have math currently. So it's just literary for the moment. But that's something we might look to in the future, but currently is not on there.
And then we just got this, so 2 kind of came up. Can you select lessons?
You can. We'll be getting into that a little bit later, but that's part of the advantage of Helios, which is the online website that's the companion to Poly, is you can actually go through and assign any lesson on there. So for instance, if you just want to start, at the alphabetic word signs, or if you want to start at a particular letter, you can choose exactly which lessons you want and assign those. And then when Poly is started, she'll go exactly to what is assigned.
And then, oh, go ahead, Sully.
I was going to say, Sarah, there was a question that came in earlier about can you have 2 or more students using Poly? And the answer to that question is yes. We'll talk a little bit more about that related to Helios, but as the device ships in out of the box and once set up, yeah, you are able to have multiple students accessing the lessons within Poly.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say there's 2 main ways to do that. So one, you could just run it in guest mode. So she wouldn't be recording any of the information, but you could have multiple students interacting with it. Or as kind of alluded to, you can make individual accounts on Helios for your different learners. And then you just have to switch between which learners assigned to the Poly.
These questions are awesome, by the way.
Yeah, we're getting a ton of questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking, everyone.
So one question, and you're not going to necessarily like the answer, but I like the suggestion, is so on Helios, can we review the lessons to know what is actually being taught in each lesson prior to assigning it? And the answer there is no, but I love that idea. So you will know the lesson title. So it's not just lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. So you're not just going to have to guess and just cross your fingers and hope you got it right. So you will generally know what they're going to be asked. But it would be a nice feature to go ahead and include that in Helios. And I think that is something we could look at for a future feature. So yeah, thanks for asking about that.
And building off of that, you can, like Will was saying, see the name of the lesson, but also like my example here where I show a typical lesson, it has the titles for each of the sections of the lesson. You can read the titles of each of the sections of those lessons. So there are a few differences, but typically the typical lesson follows this pattern that's here. Plus there's cumulative stuff we're about to get to.
And you could create yourself as a student and review it that way. So you can be a teacher and a student, and then have your actual student or students. And then that way you could take it as a student and not interfere with your student's progress. Can I say student one more time? No, multiple students. So Gloria asked, only one student may use Poly, but several can be assigned within Helios. So only one can use it physically at a time, but multiple can be assigned to the same unit. You know, they'd have to share, so pass it, and you'd have to switch them through Helios, but you can have multiple students using the Poly. We're getting a ton of questions.
Why don't we
We'll need to move on, but
yeah, but we'll
Okay.
collect these and we'll look at them at the end and I guess respond in the chat.
yeah,
as
we'll
well.
have another question too.
Yeah.
I
Sounds
just don't
good.
want
We'll
us to run out of time.
definitely keep asking. I'm excited to hear what you're asking. So this gets us to our next poll question. True or false, Poly needs internet access to function?
Well, I guess we came up on that question pretty quickly, didn't we, guys? All right, so I've just gone ahead and I've logged onto or launched the question. And William, I'm just kind of scrolling down through. So we'll touch on this. Gloria Richmond is asking about assessment data collection. So Sarah, you're going to get into that as you talk about Helios. And then let's see, I thought there was there is no opening or closing code. This particular webinar is not available for ACVREP credit. And there's a question here. Can you have one or more teachers on Helios? I guess, Sarah, you'll cover that when we talk about Helios. So, okay. All right, well, we've got 61% participation at this particular point in time. I'm going to end the poll. True or false, Sarah, Poly needs internet access to function?
So the answer is false with a caveat. So Poly does not need the internet at all to function. You take her out of the box and you've never connected to the internet, you'll solve all of the lessons, everything is right there. Now, there are some parts of Poly, some of the features that do need internet access, but it does not need continuous 24/7 internet access. So by that, I mean, when you assign a learner to Poly, Poly needs to have internet access to know which learner is assigned initially. Then once she knows which learner is on her, she can be disconnected from the internet. She'll keep tracking the data for the student as far as lesson progression goes. And whenever she's next connected to the internet, she will upload the lesson progression to the Helios. So one way to use Poly could be you just connect for 10 minutes a day to get everything updated, and then you use her offline again. You do also need to be connected to the internet to switch between learners. So
one of the really great features that I think people will like on the Poly is how seamless and pain-free the update process is. So when you're connected to the internet, the Poly will go ahead and check, is there an update? If there's an update, it'll go ahead and download the update, and then it'll install the update, and you don't have to do anything. And you can't mess that process up. So like even if you unplug your Poly in the middle of it installing the update, that's already been accounted for so that it's not going to break anything if you interrupt the update process. So you can just, you don't even have to think about updates. Just, use your Poly and it will take care of itself. You don't have to constantly be trying to, oh, is there an update available? Do I need to update all these units? What's going on? It'll take care of itself, and then we'll communicate with you about the release notes and all that, and you can check that out when you're interested.
I also want to chime in after that. If you want to know what version your Poly is running on, that is on your Helios account. It'll tell you which version it's currently running. Okay, well, let's move on from here because we are a little short on time because we have a lot of content to cover. So this is an example of what some of the cumulative review is. This is going to be a bit different between uncontracted and contracted Braille, but I'm going to give you a short example of what is in uncontracted. So this would be the alphabet itself is divided into 3 sections of approximately equal length. So at the end of each one of those sections will be this section review. So the first thing you would encounter is a letter story. So a story is read that contains vocabulary words with the letters or contractions that have been learned. And when this comes up in the story, then it is announced, repeated. And an example of how to write that is shown on the large and standard Braille displays. So if the word was apple, for instance, then you would have an A that would come up on the large Braille cells and the standard Braille cells. Then the next thing you would encounter would be a typing or writing proficiency test. And again, that just depends if you're in the typing or writing section. There are 5 rounds to this. So the learner is given a letter verbally and told to write or type it. And then at the end of each round, learners are told which ones they got wrong. And for each one they got wrong, they are told which dots they pressed if it was the key or which dots they wrote if it was the writing. They're told the correct way to write it and shown an example on the Braille displays. The next thing you would encounter would be a letter race. This is a game. So for this, you'll have letters appearing on the standard Braille display. So there's going to be continuously appearing. So you could have an A pop up and then a B, or it'd be more random than that, but you get the idea. So the Braille cells are going to be getting full. And the game ends when all of these cells are full. That's, quote, how you lose. But no one loses, we're all winners. So when you get close to the end, for instance, when you get to like 5 of the 6 cells being full, there will be a ding to let the learner know, a bell ring, that it's close to being over. So how does the learner clear a Braille cell? So they would write or type the letter to make it disappear from the standard Braille display. And so the idea is the quicker they write or type it, the less full the cells will be and the longer the game can go. And also when the bell rings to notify that it's getting full, then it will also vibrate. The next thing you'll find is a word story. So this is another story that is read out loud that has vocabulary words from the story, and they have their definitions read out loud. So an example of the word is shown on the standard Braille cells. For the words that are there, the learner is prompted to write or type the word, and they'll contain letters that have already been learned. So in contracted, there's a couple of different proficiency tests, but we're running a little bit short on time, but we can talk about that later if we have extra time, but pretty similar idea to this. So let's talk about games. So these are games that you can also access through the main menu. There is a game section. So these are kind of the main games of Poly. There's a couple other ones as well, but these are the main ones. So we have Whack-A-Braille Game of Dots. So in this game, all of the dots in the large Braille display cell 1 are raised. So Poly will verbally tell the learner what dot to press down on the large Braille display cell. So this is like when the student is just learning, like dot 1 is dot 1 sort of thing. So for instance, Poly could say dot 5, and the learner would press down dot 5. Cells would reset, and they're given a new one to press. This is a timed game. It is 30 seconds long, and Poly will vibrate when time is running out. The next game is Whack-A-Key, Game of Keys. So in this one, it's kind of similar idea. So Poly will verbally tell the learner what key to press on the 6-key keyboard. So for instance, key 1. Learner will press that. This is also a time game, 30 seconds long. When Poly ask you which key to press, it will also show on the large Braille display and standard Braille displays the dots that correspond to the keys that have been requested. So in letter race, so letters will appear on the standard Braille display, and the bell will ring to notify of a new letter. And then this is very similar to the other game that we were talking before. The difference being that the one in the main menu could access any of them, and then the one in the sections would access just the ones that were reviewed in that section. So then we have Balloon Pop, Game of Words. So in this one, Polly will verbally read a word, and the word is also shown on the standard Braille display. The learner will use the 6-key keyboard to type the word and then press the spacebar to submit. All the words in this game are uncontracted Braille. This is also a timed game, and the game is over when a learner takes too long to type in a word. And then the balloon will pop, there'll be a little popping sound, and the game is over. So I mentioned we have a couple other games as well. So we also have 5 Explore games. These are not timed, they're more interactive just to let the learner explore, hence the name. So in these, there's 5 versions of them. So there's English Braille Grade 1, Phonics, Dots, Keys, and then the Braille Writing Slate. So basically, it's kind of like a sandbox game. You get in there, and for instance, for the dot one, the learner can press down different dots on the large Braille display, and Polly would tell you what dot you pressed. Same thing with the keys. Then building off that, we have Vocabulary Builder. So this is connected to Helios. Teacher can put in any vocabulary they want, put their own definitions in, and this is where they would access to review and go through them as the student. We also have Translate Grade 1 Uncontracted Braille to Grade 2 Contracted Braille. So the learner can type in, and it'll give you what the contracted version of that is. Also fun to point out, we actually have 2 Jack Hartman songs on here. We have the alphabet song and the alphabet word sign songs. And those are in the lesson section. So do we have any questions about that before we move on to Helios?
One question we'll want to address right now. I've been addressing questions in the chat, and we probably shouldn't run through those just for time, but folks are asking about the June update. So the first units that went out, there was an update in June, and we will have messaging about that soon. But the main thing is we've been listening to your feedback, and we've got a great update coming. It's going to require a little bit, but it's going to be a painless process. And the new units are already going to have these changes. But we definitely really appreciated all the feedback we got on those early units. And so that's why we're adding USB updating. We're making it easier to reset a unit so that it's easier to turn a unit back in at the end of the semester and things like that. So we've got a ton of stuff that make Poly better thanks to those early adopters. So thank you all so much, and we'll have more out soon about that for those early adopter folks.
I would also like to build onto that. This is not a one-time thing. Poly will be continuously updated as we get feedback and new features will be added. So
yeah, the one thing that's a one-time thing is the June update is a little more involved than all future updates will be, just because we're changing a lot of low-level stuff to make the USB updating possible.
That is also true. So in the interest of time, I'll quickly go over Helios, and then we can do some more questions if they come up. So Helios is the online companion to Poly. And like we were saying before, it's totally free, you never have to pay for it. And it's a way that you can easily track learner progress. So when it is connected to the internet, lesson progression from Poly is updated to Helios. So like I was saying before, Poly does not have to be continuously updated. As long as the learner is assigned to the Poly, she'll keep all the progress in the background. And the next time she connects to the internet, she'll update the lesson progression. Poly can also be used in guest mode that has no connected learner, but all the lessons are unlocked, but she will not track lesson progression with that. So we're running a little bit short on time, so I will actually give a quick demonstration of, oh, before I get to that, I'm going to do a quick demonstration of Helios, but we have one last question right now. Let's
hold off on that question for a little bit, Miss Sarah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, then I will stop sharing this and I will go over to Helios real quick. So mine's going to look a little bit different than yours just because I have a bunch of different learners on mine. A lot of them are test accounts that we made. So when you first open up Helios, when you're logged in, you'll encounter a dashboard. And on here, you'll have the number of learners that you have, the number of polys connected, and then some just like performance stats. So like time spent, average time per day, so on and so forth. So Helios is divided into different sections. So you have the dashboard, the learners. The learners are where you access all the different learners that are on your poly. And you can click on them to get more individual information, or you can add new learners here. You have your poly tab, and this shows all the polys that are associated with your account. And this is also where you can add in new polys. And then you also have a report tab. The report tab is for general overall among all your learners. If you're wanting information about a specific learner, you would go back to the learner tab. And then you would click on the specific learner or select the specific learner that you have. And this opens up a separate menu. So in here we have overview, which shows the last time they were online, the amount of progress, and then their time they've spent altogether. You'll have usage, which is similar information about time spent, lessons taken. Progress is going to be the main one you're probably going to be interested in. So this is where you can see exactly which lessons or sections of lessons have been completed by the learner. It'll show if it's in writing or typing. And then to go along with that, there's a homework tab. This is the tab where you again see all the lessons, but you can assign any of them to your learner and then just hit save to save that. You can also see the vocabulary that that particular learner has gone through. And then there's a settings tab as well. Also on Helios, you'll find there's a link to the Poly Quick Start Guide. We're in the process of making a reduced shortened version of the Quick Start Guide and also a full-length user guide. And we'll update everyone when that is out. But for now, this is our version that we have at the moment. So any quick questions about Helios while we're here?
Oh, I'm sure there'll be more that will be flowing into the chat. So please
I'm sure.
Are we? Is it time to hear Paul? Is it time to hear Polly, Sarah?
That it is, and we can always go over more questions if you get them in a moment.
Super.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen and show this poly. It'll take 1 second, and I've got the share sound button checked. Thanks, Zoom. So I'm now sharing an image from this document camera, and I've got poly, and I'm going to press the keys to go back to the main menu. So you'll hear it, and I hope it's not too loud.
Welcome to the main menu. Introduction to your poly and Braille.
So you can run this, and it gives you a nice, good overview. It helps you get comfortable with the device, and then you can keep going.
Whack-a-Braille. Game of dots.
So this is one of the games. So we'll go ahead and just do this. So I'm using the arrows to move through, and as I'm moving through, I'm hearing, and the Braille cells are updating. So right now the regular size Braille cells say whack. So I know where I am. And then I can press spacebar to select.
Let's play Whack-a-Braille. In this game, I will tell you which Braille dots to press, and you will have to press that dot down on the large Braille display. For example, if I say dot 2, you have to press dot 2 down on the large Braille display. For every dot you press correctly, you get a point. You have 30 seconds to whack as many dots correctly as possible. So the quicker you are, the higher you score. Press spacebar to start the game.
Whew.
Press left to listen to the instructions again.
My professional reputation is resting on my performance right now, so fingers crossed.
Ready, steady, go! Dot 5. Dot 3.
So I'm pressing on the big braille.
Dot 1. Dot 6.
And now I'm going to intentionally get this one wrong.
Sure.
Dot 6.
And so it just repeats it. It doesn't make you feel bad, for making a mistake. But it does
Dot
alert you that
6.
you got it wrong.
Dot 2. Dot 4.
Should be almost out of time.
Dot 1. Dot 5. Game over. You've scored 7 points. Congratulations! This is your new high score.
All right.
That was fun, right?
It was fun.
Press the left key if you want to try and get a higher score in the game. Otherwise, press the right key.
The audience is impressed with your knowledge of the Braille code.
Yeah, I should hope so. I should hope I know at least that much. So now I'll do, so it's left arrow, space, right arrow to go back to the main menu.
Welcome to the main menu.
And then
Whack-a-Braille. Whack-a-Key.
Whack-a-Key.
Game of keys.
Whack-a-Key is similar to Whack-a-Braille, where you're hitting on the Braille keyboard rather than on the big dot.
English Braille Grade 1.
And then I'll just go through the menu.
English Braille Grade 2. Teacher's chosen words.
Teacher's chosen words. And
English Braille Grade 2. English Braille Grade 1.
so press space to select
Reading
grade 1.
and typing. Reading and writing. Reading and typing. Reading and writing. Introduction to typing.
So you can do an intro, and that'll help the student get comfortable. And know what to
English
expect.
alphabet song.
I'm not going to play this because we're going to post this on YouTube, and that might get us pulled from YouTube. They have an automated.
Alphabet. Part 1. Alphabet.
And
Alphabet.
William is
Part
using
3.
the left and right
Mhm.
arrow keys to move right and left through this menu, everybody.
Yeah, and then pressing space to select. So I'll go ahead and press select here on part 3,
U.
and then I type in U.
Press left to go to the previous option. Press right to go to the next option. V. Press
So I'm typing-
left to go to the previous option. W. Welcome to the main intro. Whack-a-Key. English Braille.
So I'm going back
Reading
into
and typing.
typing grade 1.
Introduction to typing. Alphabet. 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 Part 2. Introduction to type. Welcome
Sorry.
to the main menu. English Braille Grade 1.
Let's get into grade 2.
English Braille Introduction to Contracted Braille. English Braille Grade 1. Uncontracted Braille. Reading and typing. Alphabetic word signs.
Whew.
Strong contractions. Strong word signs. Lower word signs. Introduction to lower word signs. Lower word sign for B. Lower word sign for B. Introduction to dot combination.
So I've selected that.
Let's learn about the lower word sign for B. Let's explore how the word be can be used in a sentence. We should be happy and we should be good to others. To be means to fix a certain character in oneself or to carry out a particular action. To repeat the introduction, press left or press right to continue. The word be is now displayed in uncontracted Braille on your standard Braille display. Use your fingers to read the standard Braille display. If you can feel the word be on the standard Braille display, press the spacebar.
And on the standard Braille display, it's a more of a signage quality dot. It's not the soft, piezoelectric cell that you'll get on like a traditional Braille display. It's more of like a signage quality dot. If you're familiar with like the Orbit display or with like what you would get on like the Monarch, it's going to be more like that. It's hard to describe how something feels, but I think that about does it. So I've got the uncontracted B over here, and then I've got the contracted B on the large Braille display, and I'll hit right arrow to keep going.
Oops!
Or
Looks like you went
space.
wrong
I did go
somewhere.
wrong.
You pressed right key. Let's try again. The word in contracted Braille, the word be can be represented in just one cell. The dot combination for the word be in contracted Braille is dots 2 and 3. Lower word sign for be is now displayed on your large Braille display. Use your fingers to read the large Braille display. As you remember, lower word signs are those contractions that are represented in a single cell and do not have dots that are in the top row. That means these contractions do not have dot 1 and dot 4. If you can feel lower word sign for be on the large Braille display, press the spacebar.
All right. Do we have questions coming in?
Yeah, we have a question about the activities and the large and smaller Braille display showing letters at the same time. I responded, and I want to double check this, that for some of the activities, yes, you'll see Braille on both the large and small, but not necessarily all the activities. Sarah Welch, is my response to that correct, or is that incorrect?
That's correct. And some of the activities have different things on the cells. So for instance, in some of the activities with contracted Braille, it would have the contraction on the large, and then it would have it spelled out in uncontracted Braille on the standard Braille displays. So it just kind of depends on which activity or lesson they're in at that point.
And you don't have a way of choosing what's going on, correct? There's no settings where you'd be able to turn some of that on or turn some of that off.
Currently, there is not. We are exploring a setting to turn the large Braille cell off, but not at the moment.
And a lot of folks are asking about speeding up the speech. That's something we can look at. We wouldn't want to speed it up too much, partially because it's not a computerized voice. This is an actual recording, and you don't want to overwhelm the student. But yeah, I understand. I know when I'm doing screen reader testing, I tend to go at 2 times speed. I don't know that we would go that fast, but we could probably do some sort of setting to where you could go 1.5 if the student really wanted to, or if you as the teacher, when you're running through the lessons, would rather have 1.5. I could see how that would be beneficial if you're like me and this is a review. You don't actually need to learn the lower word sign for B.
How about Bluetooth, guys? They're asking about Bluetooth, specifically connecting like a hearing aid to the device, which is a really good question.
That is a really good question. The Bluetooth isn't activated at the moment, but it does have Bluetooth capabilities. So let us talk to the developers. That's a great question. And let's see what we can do there. But it is technically possible. It's just a matter of how complex it'll be.
Would there be a way, William, to be able to somehow connect a Bluetooth to that audio output jack? Like a Bluetooth device?
I mean, it has a Bluetooth radio, so
Yeah,
it's
okay.
just a matter of getting it to utilize the Bluetooth radio in a way that is helpful. So.
Right, somebody's asking us to post the registration in the for the next webinar. I'm going to drop that in there now. We are coming up on the close of the hour. We've had a number of people asking throughout about opening and closing codes. At the outset, we explained that this particular webinar is not for continuing education credits. It gave us some flexibility in terms of what we did in terms of the content. However, I did drop in the chat a moment ago a webinar that will come up on the 7th of September. It's going to be brought to you by the phenomenal folks in our educational outreach team called Power Up Braille Literacy with Polly. It will be 90 minutes. It will get into details about setting up your Polly, creating teacher and student portals in Helios and more. So we would encourage you to register for that. We have had some questions about whether or not this recording will be available. The answer to that question is yes. We will post this to our YouTube channel, and I had dropped in the chat a link to where you can find the recordings for our partner showcase webinars. I will do that again here momentarily. So I don't know if William and Sarah, as I do that, if you guys have seen any other questions, or if you want to give the audience any parting wisdom.
So it's been so helpful getting to hear directly from folks. We have gotten a lot of feedback so far, but this has been great getting to talk live with so many people. And one of the things I'm thinking about now is maybe some kind of teacher mode where you could adjust the speed, where maybe it doesn't require you to go through the whole lesson and you can kind of skip ahead. Some options that would be useful just for the teacher so that they can run through it. That seems like a really reasonable request, and so something we'll look into. So thank you all so much for all this feedback, and I really appreciate everybody that was able to come here today.
Sarah Welch, you have any parting words for the audience?
I don't know about parting words, but thank you all for being here. We did have a question come in I want to quickly address. It's, do we find the updates on the Helios website? The answer is yes, and. So Polly can actually, as long as she's connected to the internet, get updates without Helios. But you can see on Helios what version your Polly is currently running on. And soon we'll have USB updates active. So if you want to do the update via USB, you can find it there as well. So thank you all for being here.
Right. And for those of you who are about to go back to school, I'm not sure if we should be saying congratulations or we're sorry. We hope it's congratulations and you are all really excited about returning to the classroom, because you guys do phenomenal work. And I can tell you, from traveling around the country, I run into the kiddos that you guys are spending time with as they pursue their careers in education and computer science and whatnot. So thank you for all of the work that you guys do. Just one last note again, that the price of Poly is $999. It is available on quota funds. The catalog number is 1-08-490-00. There is a place where you can follow information on free lists about Poly. We'll do a follow-up email with everybody and share that. William and Sarah, great job. Sarah, congratulations on your first webinar. You did a phenomenal
Yeah,
job.
you did a really good job, Sarah.
Yeah.
you.
So, all right. All right. If that's not it, everybody enjoy the rest of your summer and check back with us on more of our Partner Showcase and Access Academy webinars. Have a great one.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, William. Thanks, Sarah. Great job.